Penguin Random House Audio presents Written on the Dark by Gavriel Kay. Read for you by Simon Vance. For Laura, Sam, Matthew, with very great love and an enduring awareness that what I write, what I can shape in these stories, is because of them, because it is for them. Imagined voices, and beloved, too, of those who died, or of those who are lost unto us, like the dead. Sometimes in our dreams they speak to us. Sometimes in its thought the mind will hear them. And with their sound, for a moment there return sounds from the first poetry of our life, like music in the night, far off, that fades away. Konstantin Cavafy, translated by Daniel Mendelsohn. What will you do when it is your turn in the field with the god? Louise Gluck. Part 1. Chapter 1. The deepest part of the night, in the most savage winter of the coldest year anyone could remember. So he thought, hearing the middle-of-night bells that meant he needed to get up, to go outside, right now, into the city, into the ice, in the blackness. He didn't want to. Why would anyone in their right mind want to? Were there enough coins to steal to make it worth going out into the streets now? Evidently, yes, because they were going to try. Not so many coins, but enough. He was lying alone in Sylvie's bed. Sylvie had gone upstairs to Annie and Urda's room carrying the candle. He had no light here. She had let him stay in her room, however. She knew why he'd wanted to sleep away from his mother's house tonight. She didn't ask questions, didn't force him not to answer or lie. Sylvie was his most trusted friend, possibly his only trusted friend. He didn't want to think too much about that just now. They'd agreed some time ago not to bed each other, probably wise. Most of the time he thought so. It protected the friendship. He'd already been awake when the night's third bells sounded from the sanctuaries. He'd counted them. He tended to awaken too early when he had a thing to do, a place to go in the dark or at dawn. A lifelong fear of being late, oversleeping. He didn't sleep well in any case, often lay in bed, at home, in a tavern bed with a girl, working up a poem. Lines in the dark. He was a man who shaped lines in the dark. He'd rise and light a candle at the embers of a fire to scribble by. That defined him, he thought. It would do as well as anything else to define him. He was still young, of course. He might grow into something different, someone different. You weren't the same through the whole of your life, were you? Not marked by one thing. If you lived long enough to change, of course. Thierry Villar didn't expect to live a long life. In this city, in this time, it was a reasonable way to feel. So he thought, anyway. Perhaps he might be modestly famous before he died. Not just known in a few taverns here in Orane. Known and sometimes hated. His verses could be harsh. And he named names, sometimes names of people who were, well, famous, and not happy with what he wrote about them. He took chances that way. Didn't you do that for your art? For some reason the thought amused him, even though nothing was really amusing in this cold. His poems, their mockery, drew raucous laughter in the taverns and had earned him drinking and dicing companions, and sometimes the company of women afterwards. Worthwhile, accordingly. He was young enough to judge things that way. It really was time to get out of bed. He had some distance to cover after curfew, through streets where the ice lay in places as a coating over manure and refuse. But it was Smart to have established his presence over at the Mule earlier this evening, and then to sleep here tonight. Erda had served him 2 cups of wine downstairs, and Thierry had played dice for a bit. Low stakes, he had no money to lose. Erda would remember, would say as much. Thierry Villar, yes, was here drinking with some students. Why? It was jad-cursed cold outside. It was cold inside. It could make a man mad, or kill him. People died in a winter like this. There were wolves in the city. They slipped through the walls, crossed the frozen river, roamed the darkness, starving, bold. You didn't want to encounter starving wolves in the night. The god was supposed to battle demons on behalf of mortal men and women in the black cold beneath the world now. That was probably a lot like this, Villar thought. Heresy. His mother and stepfather were deeply pious. He was less so. He didn't know what his father had been like, had been too young when Rochon-la-Reine had died of a fall, and mother and child had come to Orane the way so many did, desperate for food and shelter, seeking a way to survive, while poverty stalked the world. They'd been lucky, protected by the god, his mother would say, had said. He had an education, a life of some security ahead if he wanted it. And yet here he was, about to dress and go outside to rob a holy place. Folly and need. Someone might say greed, but he'd stay with need, thank you. When you gambled at dice or cards and lost to certain people, you really did need to pay them back. And he'd long ago spent what money he'd ever had on a woman. The wrong woman entirely. He was halfway dressed, already, lying in bed. Ridiculous, but necessary. He pushed aside the 3 blankets Sylvie had, Jad bless her forever, and pulled on and belted his trousers over leggings. The trousers were stiff, half frozen. Of course. He swore. A second pair of socks over the ones he already wore, then a second ice-cold woolen shirt over his tunic. He pulled on his boots, with difficulty, swearing at them too, at himself, at the jad-cursed world. Not at the city, mind you. He loved Orane too much. "I hate how much I love this city," he'd even said to Sylvie once. Said it to others too, but she was the one who told him it was an odd thought and asked him why. It was the way she was. She asked questions. They'd been in the tavern downstairs, he remembered. He'd just recited a new poem, received coins and drinks for it, and laughter. He chased laughter, Villar thought. Always had. Needed it. In the inns and taverns he was quick with his words, was known, feared, for it. But that time he'd thought for a bit before answering her. Because if you love something too much, you can be destroyed if you lose it, he'd said eventually. She'd left it at that. She knew Jolie de Charette, too. Of course she did. Had even warned him about her. Sylvie had an annoying habit of being right about things. No time for that thought either, just now. He needed money. He needed to do a thing tonight. Villar found his cloth cap on a post at the end of the bed. Pulled over his ears, it made him look like an outlaw. One of the Jacquards, with their secret language, and safe houses dotting the countryside, with door-knock sequences you needed to know to be admitted, not killed, and then coded phrases to speak. He even knew some of those, from a late-night conversation with a man who'd had too much to drink once. He didn't know the countryside at all. He didn't like the countryside. He was a city person. This city, which he loved too much. It was holy for him, really, for all the violence and danger within it, for all that he hadn't been born here. Orane was what he knew of the world, really. Holy for him, he laughed at himself. He was about to take part in the robbery of a genuinely holy place. The cloth cap of an outlaw suited. Moving cautiously in the utterly black room, trying to stay quiet, he retrieved his patched-up coat, pulled it on. Dark outside, dark in here. Dark in his heart? Not really, Thierry Villar.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?